I said, you mean like, where? You mean like right here kind of? Yeah, well, where was it planted? And I said, I don't have to tell you where it was planted. I don't even have to say whether I know or not exactly the spot. Because if I said it was planted right here, about 3 feet over here, then what would happen is then you would go tell somebody, and then that somebody'd say like, oh, we found out where the tree of peace is planted. So let's all go over there, all of us. And then more people would keep coming and coming and coming. And so this whole sacredness would kind of be trampled on. It would be trampled over because all these people would be all running over there to get a piece of it. Instead of us all sharing a love for this whole area and holding it close to our hearts. And that's how things are spiritual and sacred. You hold it close to your heart and you acknowledge it. You acknowledge and respect so that things do not become commonplace. So I guess that's just kind of what I wanted to tell you about our connection to the earth and our connection to this area here. I always tell everybody that that I live right here. I've looked all around different parts of the world, and I'm right here where I truly love where I live. And I hope everybody else does. Everybody has that right to love where you live, acknowledge it, and respect it. We're all living here together. That's the reality right now. We all live here together. That's the basic message I guess I have.
One of the things that happened when this world was formed and the Creator sent us messages, he said that he says, I have created everything for you, for mankind to live here. And your responsibility is to give thanks. There are certain times within our history that we forget to give thanks. And when that happens, there's turmoil in the world. It happened when the peacemaker came here. We forgot our lessons. We forgot how to give thanks. We forgot, the names of places. And he came and he said, he brought us back together under this great law of peace. And one of the things that one of the lessons he brought to us was to talk about we all have one dish, one spoon to share. And when you look at that, when you look at one dish, one spoon, you're looking at an environmental philosophy. And that environmental philosophy says that we share in the resources. And one of the things you do is you first give thanks. You have to give thanks for everything that was provided to you. You don't take the first thing you see. You only take whatever you need to sustain yourself. For you and your family, not anything more. And then you leave some for the future generations. If you don't do that, what are you causing? You're causing destruction of those 7 generations to come. And when we stop to give thanks, he warned us, the peacemaker warned us, when you don't give thanks, you will start to see those things disappear. And what's happened? The passenger pigeon's gone. There's species dying every day. They say that, when you plant corn, we have whole ceremonies that talk about, planting rites and songs that go with it. And everything that we do has a spiritual connection. There's that sacredness that was given to us. We follow our original instructions as given to us by the Creator. When this world came into being, it was nothing but water. I think within every creation story there seems to be that commonality, that there were floods or it was all water here. And within our creation story, there was nothing but water here, and until one of the animals went down into the depths of the water and took the earth that was on the bottom of the river, the ocean, and brought it and put it on a turtle's back. So because of that, we call this place Turtle Island. And we need to start claiming back our names. Ontario, Undalio means beautiful lake. Schenectady, Skanadadadi, it means on the other side of the gum. What does it mean? The gum of the tree. When you talk about Kana Johari, I think that's the English word. It's really Gnat Johalege, the place of the clean pot. The St. Lawrence River was called Ganawaga, the place of the rapids. So, it tells you the significance of the place that we are. So we need to start claiming that back and trying to tell the rest of the world, that spiritual connection. We also need to start giving thanks. Give thanks to the waters, give thanks to Mother Earth, give thanks to everything that has been provided to us. And we need to follow what the peacemaker said. One dish, one spoon. This earth we share. There's only one resource here, unless we create another planet and we go to there. But we all live here in this one earth. And we need to make sure that we give thanks, that we only take what we need to sustain ourselves, and we make sure that there's stuff there for the future generations. If not, what are we doing? We're destroying ourselves. Before, one of these days, we're going to be the species that are gone, because we're also not giving thanks to each other. So I give thanks for coming up here, and I give thanks for everyone who's attending. And I hope you bring these words that were given to you back to your home and back to, not just have Thanksgiving, when is it? The end of November? But have it every day, have it when you wake up and have it to close the day. That's the important thing. And to teach your children and your children's children how to get along in this world. The other thing about the sacredness of water, it was used as metaphors within all our teachings. When you look at our treaties say, we will sign this agreement as long as the grass grows and as long as the river flows. The river is still flowing, and those treaties are still alive. Yeah, those treaties are still living. We have to start using a good mind again. When we talk about cleaning Onondaga Lake, we need to make sure that the species within that lake can survive. We share. There are brothers, there are sisters. If that fish doesn't live anymore, what's that saying about us as species? Do we have power over that species? One might think so, but eventually, if everything else leaves, we're next. We're just around the corner. And it may come. But within our prophecies, we also know that as people, we can change that. We can change the outcome. We can stop some of the prophecies that are happening. And one of the prophecies say, we will buy our water. I couldn't believe that. When I heard that in the 60s, we were drawing water from the St. Lawrence River. And I thought, this is a mile wide. And it's, I forget how deep it is. And how can that kind of resource be gone? Well, today I'm buying my water. That's a fact. Buying my water, and that prophecy has come true. With the Great Lakes, there's a rush right now to privatize the water. You have seven states and 2 provinces who are rushing to claim jurisdiction over the water of the Great Lakes. Mm-hmm. Jurisdiction? I mean, it's supposed to be shared, and when it starts being privatized, the control over people will be water. If you don't believe that, then, can we survive without, H2O? Can you create it? Maybe. Can we get it from the oceans? Maybe. But it's going to cost us a lot. So we really need to think where our future is going. Okay. So with that, we're going to invite Robin.
No, he's going to come up here.
I'm sorry.
I want to thank Joyce for coming to help out.
We'll invite Robin back to the stage, and there are microphones on both aisles, I believe. And you can go to a microphone and ask a question or make a comment. Directed to anyone. I know there must be questions.
Just a comment. I think science has taken the sacredness out of our teachings. I think we need to start bringing the two back together. And we need to acknowledge that relationship of science and indigenous knowledge. And I think we can change our future. And we can go maybe not back to the way it was, but at least a brighter future for our kids.
Well, what a great pitch for tomorrow's teaching.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about tomorrow. Do come out. Yeah, Katie.
Oh, there's people upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you kind of just answered my question, but what I was going to say was, with the background that all of you have, both in the academic science and traditional ecological knowledge, how do you see the two working together? Because it's becoming more obvious that that's what's going to have to happen to go forward. So where do you see the opportunities? Where can we get better in working towards that?
Can I answer? Huh? There's a process that, if you come to the lecture tomorrow at lunchtime, after lunch, there's a process that we use, and I know you've heard it over and over again, and it's called the two-row wampum, and it talks about two paths. There's a metaphor again. Two paths, we're going down this river of life together, and down this river of life, we might have two different value systems, but we can be able to relate to each other. And when we do that, when you look at, what's in between us, is it conflict? Is it, a different system? Yes, but between us, there's peace, friendship, and respect. And if we keep that in mind, then we can work together. We do need the sciences, because when you look at indigenous knowledge systems, that's a system that was observed over long periods of time. We probably, knew how to live on this land because we observed the animals, we observed the trees, we observed everything here and knew how to get along with them. But sometimes with this changing world, we now need to know instantly what's happening. Why did the water turn from blue to green? Well, algae bloom. You can look at that through observation, but to get an immediate answer, you have to go sometimes to a pH test for the water or whatever else you need. So sometimes we need that instant. And we're developing a Haudenosaunee environmental protection process that does bring the two together. And I will talk about that tomorrow, but maybe Robin or Jeanne would like to add to that?
Sure. This is pretty intimidating. I would want to echo what you're saying about science, and it's the way that it has divorced itself from spirituality. Science almost is by definition looking at things from the material world which are testable, looking for processes. But to me, the beauty of native science, of traditional ecological knowledge, is that it is embedded in a sense of moral responsibility. It's embedded with a sense of reciprocity so that we can understand the material functionings of the world without separating it from our responsibilities to the world. And I think the metaphor of the two-row wampum is really important. And as I've tried to think about traditional knowledge and scientific knowledge coexisting, the metaphor that I use to try to think about it is that of the three sisters. Of when we think about why does a three sisters garden work so beautifully as it does, how does it nourish so well, it's because the strengths of each of those plants come together. The strengths of one plant complement the weaknesses and substitute of the weaknesses for the other. And in the scientific community, we understand what the weaknesses of our science is, and particularly the application of that science to these complex issues. And so it seems to me that the wisdom of traditional knowledge sort of intertwining with scientific knowledge, really guiding scientific knowledge, the three sisters could provide a model for a symbiosis between those ways of knowing.
I have a little bit to say about that. Not being a scientist, I'm just a regular, ordinary, whatever you call it, not a scientist. But I have to say that my comment would be that yes, science and traditional knowledge can meet and work together. But I would have to say that it is almost a forced thing because of this world that's around us now, because people are accustomed to questioning everything and expecting immediate answers, as opposed to believing in the following the beliefs and the teachings of our people whose ways have been that way through ages and ages. We don't even know how long. I think that's more of a proven test to me than anything. And also our faith in who we are, because if we know that the people that came before us followed these practices, they must certainly have known why at some time, and it's certainly good enough for me. I'm not doubting the science part, but I just wanted to let you know that there's also the acknowledgement part, and sometimes the expectations of the scientific side will try to overcome the traditional beliefs, which I guess are probably more of acknowledgements, patience, respect, which I'll take a little bit more time than a litmus test.
Just to add to what Jeanne was saying, one of the things in our Thanksgiving address was we acknowledged the stars, we thank them. And we also thank them for bringing the water for the morning dew. And I guess, that's oral tradition, and science has just proven that water came from, I forget what star out in space. So it's real funny that, our knowledge is now being proven through the sciences. It's amazing.
When you talked about the practices of land management that had happened before the Europeans came,
Hard to hear you.
everything was integrated, and now everything has been bisected with miles and miles and miles of concrete and similar type of structures. And I'm wondering if anybody could speak to that. I don't know if that's a scientific or a traditional problem or a legal problem.
I didn't hear that.
We had a little trouble hearing what you were saying, but
Oh.
if you're...
Concrete. What are you
Concrete.
going,
Yeah.
what are you going to do about the role of concrete in all of these things and similar structures? How could you speak to that? How will you deal with that? Or do you need to?
Well, you're certainly, because of not only concrete, but urbanization, et cetera, the land that was once whole is now fragmented. And that is understood as a major problem in conservation biology, in that the animals and the plants that are left on little islands, little fragments of habitat, can't move as they used to replenish each other, to breed with one another. When the world changes, as it always is, there's no place for them to go. There are no corridors by which they can escape and find the better habitat. It's of great concern with things like global climate change. As the climate changes, how will all of our relations, our non-human persons, how will they find a new place to be because of the very problem that you're talking about? And is that a problem of, I think you said, is that a problem of science or of traditional knowledge?
Or of law?
Or of law, probably all of the above. But if we condition the way that we live here by respect and acknowledgement for all those other species, we wouldn't do those things. Or we then envision a future where we correct those wrongs that we've made and make places for all those species to go. I'm not sure that is exactly what you were asking about, but it's my
It was an
response to it.
open-ended question. You answer it as you wish.
Linda?
I wanted to ask two questions. One that's a kind of a mundane or concrete question of another sort about past practices in regard to pests, what we call pests anyway, in the garden, I have pests in my garden. And I'm just curious that you didn't give information about the past practices in regard to management of the land in regard to that kind of issue. I'm curious if you have knowledge of that. And the other question is mainly for Robin, I think, in regard to this project of trying to pursue the two paths. I think it's similar to what the Chinese call walking on two legs, where it's not a choice between science and indigenous knowledge, but it's a use of both. I wondered if you could speak to what your experiences have been of trying to enact that in a Western-dominated space, like ESF. And Jack might be able to speak to this too. I mean, in these institutions that some of us work in, like SU, like ESF, in which the rules of the game, the accreditation, the curriculum, all of this stuff is sort of set up in a way that doesn't validate traditional knowledge and doesn't validate traditional knowers without degrees. What has been your experience in trying to alter that and in trying to walk on the two legs? And do you feel like things are getting better in that regard?
Well, oh, I thought she was asking it to you. And then she said you had-
Let me try the hardest question first, which is the second one, I think. In terms of, you're absolutely right about trying to think about traditional knowledge in the institutions of academia and even broader in scientific institutions is really swimming upstream. But I think about myself as a college student coming from a background where I thought I knew something about traditional, or I thought I knew something about plants. I thought I knew something about land just from my family, from growing up. And I went to ESF, actually, as an undergraduate. And I thought I was going to learn about plants and their relationships. I thought I was going to learn about practices of reciprocity. I thought that's how I understood botany, as plants as persons, as non-human persons. And then when I went to college, it was a real rude wake-up call that, in fact, we were learning all the mechanisms, we were learning all the functions. There was no spirit or relationship in that at all. It was just learning the mechanisms. And I almost left college because of that, because there was no place for traditional thinking there. It was such a sharp gulf between traditional ways of conceiving of the natural world and the scientific world. And so I have to say that that propels me to try to swim upstream in academia and bring this in so that these ideas that, as you say, that people have developed over millennia that are tried and true, they need to have a voice at the table. And it's starting to happen, certainly here and elsewhere around the country.
There's one prophecy also, full of prophecies today, that one of these days our children will talk to the world. And the way we interpret that is that there's going to be a lot of environmental destruction, and we see it already. And the processes that we have had through, as Haudenosaunee people, you know, working with the land and that relationship, that one of these days, you know, the world is going to need it. And in the future, maybe it's coming, maybe it's going to be my children, or maybe it's going to be my grandchildren. They will have this knowledge and be able to work with the outside world and teach them how to get back along with the species, with the plant life, with the fish, with the waters. And so as a parent, I raise my children traditional. You know, I've sent one to become a Mohawk speaker, and she will know the intricate understanding of that species, because when you talk about that species, you know, in Mohawk, you're talking about the function of it. So hopefully that knowledge is going to be passed along and that we can preserve it and preserve that sacredness so that when the world is ready, we'll you know, have the knowledge holders to help with the environmental destruction that is being prophesied in the future.
Anybody want to take on pest management?
Oh yes, sorry. Just one thing about pest management. Crows love corn. So when you grow your garden, you make sure that there's enough for the people now, enough for the future storage, and enough for the crows. Yeah. What else can I say?
I could just add one little piece to that. I was recently reading, actually, some accounts of Green Revolution scientists working with Mayan farmers, and they were asking them, what are your pest problems? And there was a great deal of puzzlement about this. They said, well, what are pests? And they had to have it all explained that they were pests. They said, well, no, we don't have anything like that. And indeed, when you create a mosaic landscape where there's a great deal of diversity, when you have polycultures of all these different species, there really isn't the pest load that we're accustomed to seeing here. It's because we've so simplified our landscape and we've lost so many pieces that we focus more on trying to grow crops for profit at the great scale as opposed to growing crops for sustaining our families, that pests become a problem at that scale.
We really have time for maybe 2 more questions, and then everyone is invited to join us outside for some refreshments and visiting. Take one over here.
You've said a lot tonight about how science is often in contrary to traditional knowledge, but up until maybe a few hundred years ago, even in Western civilization, science was an exploration of God's work and of natural processes, you know, natural philosophy. I was just wondering how you thought that this separation occurred and how we could bring the two back together.
Go ahead. What do you think? I'll leave it to the scientists.
I think that it's probably important to separate science as a way of knowing from science as an institution. At the beginning, Jack was talking about science as motivated by mystery, by trying to look into the living world and its complexities and understand it. Science as curiosity, science as a pursuit of knowledge. is one way of thinking of it. But what has happened, I think, and if you ask where did that separation come from, I think it's when science became an institution that, quite honestly, was hooked to capitalism, that was hooked to technology, that it was no longer a way of knowing and a way of inquiring about the mysteries of the world, but that it was harnessed to different social systems. And to me, that's where the change came.
My question is for Jeanne. I've been trying to understand something about the lake for the last 23 years that I've lived here. So I've read the periodic reports and kind of noticed the millions and millions of dollars of study. So your comments in the last couple of days about the pact have been the ones that have been the most interesting. So in some ways, I'd like to think that $1 billion would buy us steps towards progress. But there's some parts of what I'm reading that makes me think that what we're buying is steps backwards. And some of your comments and the nation's lawyers' comments make me think that we are buying steps backwards. And that's the part that gets me the most concerned. And the fact that the nation does not have enough of a voice in this process that's so important to a body of water that we should all care a lot about, especially since this is something that we've been focusing on for 20 years and spending millions and millions of dollars studying to come up with a solution that should take us forward. So I don't really know what should happen, but it seems like you should have more say in this. And if 90% of this land is publicly owned and they're not making any progress on your lands right action, for a start, should we just be arguing that the nation should get 51% of that 90% owned by the state, because they've taken so many millions of acres anyway, so let's talk about that 51% and let you have your voice at the table that way, and while they figure out what they're going to do about the land right action. Would that be something that would be too pushy from a Westerner's perspective, and the nation prefers a more thoughtful, legal, slow motion approach? Because I don't know how you're going to get your voice. And we're not going to put sand on top of a bunch of polluted stuff that we're then going to vacuum after they spend $1 billion.
Well, that was a long question. I guess we can
But since they started like the day after they signed the pact, it seems like timing is of the essence all of a sudden.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why we've been constantly trying to make more people aware, because hopefully you people, the citizens, can help us to make a difference and have our voice heard. And also that you people, the citizens, don't get the whole truth at any time. You know, because the stuff they put in the paper, like, oh, we're going to start the cleanup now, you know, and it's only not even a halfway thing, you know. If you had a, you know, they're talking about the bottom of the lake, and they're taking out half the toxins, and they're going to put sand over it, you know.
That's silly.
Yeah. So I've talked with some of these scientists and people on the lake that you know, feel like they're doing a good thing, and they're talking about, oh, it's going to be so good, it's going to be so nice in the future. But you know, you ask them if they'd let their own kid go in there, would they let their own son eat a fish, or their daughter? Their childbearing daughter, would she be safe eating a fish? And meanwhile, they're telling the general public that everything's going to be all so great. We still have a lot of work ahead of us. There's a lot of people working really hard on this situation, and at this point, I don't know what to tell you what we're going to be doing next, but you'll sure hear about it.
That's a great segue to invite you all back tomorrow night, and this is the topic. And Jeanne, you'll be with us. So thank you. I love this picture of the scientific experts being 3 Native women.
Thank you.